Hi, the New World Order by S.V. Battens. New World Order by S.V. Battens. The Reconstruction of International Life. And he shall be judged between the many of the people that shall prove the strong nations afar, that they shall be beat there with swords and plows and shares, that the spears and the pruning hooks. Nation shall not fill the sword against the nation. Neither shall they learn war or any more. Malachi 44:3. By the first interpretation, kings of the righteousness and kings of Salem and the kings of peace. Hebrews 7:2. The real test of proof is the racial superiority lies not in the realm of the military power, but in that the morale and spirit level. In the true race, the truly great men seek to give justice rather than give rights. The people advocate no peace at any price, but righteousness at any cost. The Federal Council of Churches in the Church of Christ in America. We seek to the region based upon the consent covered by the sustained by the organized opinion of the mankind. President Woodrow Wilson. The reconstruction of international life. The World War changes to our civilization called the world reconstruction. The fact that the commodity could be in 20th century shows that there are some serious defects in the world order, some things wrong in the civilization coming to itself with a woeful possibility, as is the war that complies with rigorous scrutiny to the underlying principles of our civilization and summons upon the find of the truth of foundations and to build upon them. There's no mystery of war. It has not come as a blot out of the blue. The coming of a surprise to no one. In fact, it has been foreseen, foretold for decades. The surprise is that it should be so long that the war and direct outgrowth of the fall principles were international policies. Long ago we were warned. Be not to deceive. God is not mocked. For whatever sow the man sow, thou shalt also reap. Of old we have heard the motion: the nation shall be turned into hell that forget God. The generations of a nation and sound of the wind is not strange that the show should reap the whirlwind. The world war is a revelation of false principles and policies in the nation. In the hell that was opened up in Europe, we see the nature's man sin and learn how far that he wanted to wander in from God. The nations of Europe have proposed the faith of Jesus Christ and have honored his name, yet his foreign policies of so-called Christianity nations have been practically untouched by their Christian spirit. The policy might belong indifferently to Mohammed, Buddhist, or pagan people. The nations have been looking after these things of self and have not sought to the welfare of others. Each has been trying to secure the largest share of the earth, to control the trade routes and attract them to its rivals. The balance formed the alliance by the balance of the powers posed upon the point of the bayonet. They have tried to keep the peace of the world. These things that are all great in European nations have done in a great or lesser degree. Evil principles of one nation accepted in the full is carried out of their logical conclusion, and the result in economic imperialism, aggressive militarism of Germany, and a few prophetic souls have seen even learned the policy and warned of the nations the coming of the judgment, but they have been voices of the crying of the wilderness. Warring has been gone unheaded, but now in the horrors of the war, brutality of the Germanisms, we read evil, the possibility, see whether they lead. Never again have the nations have deceived and regarded such policy as harmless. The simply and diabolical murder of life of the nations brings havoc upon the world. The war has done more than this, has brought out into the light a deeper issue of the world struggles. Though through all the dark night and of the past, men have yearned to be free to struggle toward to the light. In our own time, humanity has tried to make a step forward towards the justice and truth. The principles of brotherhood and democracy were being large applications. International boundaries, but at last past seeks to hold the back to the future of the darkness, try to pull out of the light. Our surface of the war seems to struggle between two groups of nations with different ideals and policies of supremacy in the world and outward for the war and the struggle between militarism and humanity, between autocracy and democracy between the world. imperialism, and national freedom. These issues are involved directly upon the outcome of the war and depends on the fate of these ideals, but the outward visible signs of the inner and essential differences, the fundamental issues of are as farther deeper than any of these more fateful than all combined. Is humanity one or more or many? If the race is a numbered, isolated, discoordinated people, the people in which all nations are related by essential bonds, is each nation of the law unto itself? No such of the international right, the humanity, the fact that same moral obligations of the nation upon the righteous and the Christian, the humanity brotherhood is true that God has made one blood of all nations and fixed the appointed periods, definite boundaries in the dwelling of the Acts 17, 26 and 27 shall have the federation of the nations with the agreement of law and fair dealing. If the nations have also seek their own good, had that all they can seize of the weaker, as principle morality of justice, stewardship, and self-sacrifice, which are obligatory for the person, equal obligatory upon the nations. As between these are the deeper issues of the struggle that this makes. In some monumentous, the world is trying to take an upward step. The war reveals the force would hold the mankind back in the night. The supreme task of men below is the progress of mankind is justice, virtue, brotherhood, peace, which the sign of the wrong nation, principles, policies, and the nations. The world war revealed deflects of the civilization has shown forces that would retard the progress. The war is hence sums to found the wrong principles of civilization, renounce and reproduce these state farm true principles international life and to organize the society and summons and affirm the principles and policies which we have found to be true just for persons of society that it makes these true states of the nations them to organize the principal institution practice in world life. The true progress of mankind is only one way to end the war. What causes to prevent the war? We must change the system which makes it inevitable. As long as men and nations so far all principles and follow evil policies, so long as they reap war and the misery, because concessions and compromise that made avoid a break of the time of the patch. Upon a true when the wind sown and the whirlwind is reaped, that in the words of the prophet, the bed is shorter than that of a man that can stretch himself upon it, and then covering is narrow than he can wrap himself in. The only way to prevent the war is to remove the causes and make war. In other words, to keeping the fundamental issues of the war and the way out of the society is the way out of the world. We must make the principles and policies of the nations which we have accepted as true for the person of society. That war may be prevented, that there may be some thoroughgoing changes in ideals of men's reconstruction of international life of mankind. Four things are the impelled in which the briefly noted. 1. Creation of international mind. The first thing is true of the Christian ideal of the humanity. The real cause of a war lie because of the thought of the ideals of men. The first ideals of the nation, greatness, success, the wrong thoughts, and the trade of the government. The cause of the peace may be found in the right thoughts of the right men and high ideals of the practice. And that build up the just and brotherly world without, when we have built up a just and brotherly world within. There is the suspicion of warfare against the nations. For these reasons that the nations have a wrong attitude toward one another. We shall have the just lasting peace when in the having a chance in thoughts of men and when nations be practicing Christianity principles. The demands of radical change in ideals of men in the nation must renounce the false ideals, and so long as their principles that it has been assumed that each nation in the supreme free consideration is its own interest with regard it has been taught nothing higher than the state of the nation, if there is not but a subject to the moral. If this has been assumed that anything is good serves interests in one nation, anything that is bad which brings us no advantage to itself. To oneself. So the men taken the granted the expending nations with the right to steal the land to overreach whole peoples, their outrage killed by wholesale. Trade financiers have felt that free to seek the profit to exploit the weaker people, make the hunting of the grounds for their gain, and dispose of the natives. So they have opened obtained concessions of various lands of doubtful methods and have invaluable privileges against the people themselves. They have carefully manufactured false news and have defied and deceived the people at the home. They declared that the flag was insulted. Chancellors and diplomats, often interested in concessions and profits, have played in weaker peoples as their mere pawns in the game of chess. Under the influence of the traitors and the false doctrines, nations have created tariff barriers to help themselves and checkmate others. They sought to control the routes in the world, thereby holding selfish advantage. They promoted the delusion that the trade required that great navy to control seas and enable the nation to maintain its supremacy. They cherish the pride and the power and ambition of the dominion, so they raise the false issues and have deceived the people. They encourage the people of the nation to suspect and hate people of another nation. They have led them forth to fight and die. Apparently, the national hour, really for the sordid profits. Before the political antagonies of the nation and economic rivalries, because they explain a large part of the national rivalries and international intrigues. Modern navies and armies are noted that created merely to take human life and advance glory of the rulers, and by they are rather armed guardians, economic advantage, military protectors of world trade. As is the result, they cause the man from have grown mad. The nations have sought that he filled with the world with misery. As long as such false ideals and doctrines are accepted, so long that there is suspicion, jealousy, and hatred in the war between nations and groups of nations. There, in the positive way, we accept the affirmation's true principles of international life. Perhaps we can do better to quote some of the affirmations presented in the Federal Council of Church of the Christ of America. We accept and affirm that above the nation is humanity. The nations are neighbors. Members is one of the great human family. There's no nation is complete itself, nor can it attain its own highest level except for those in wholesome relation with the rest of mankind. All sovereignty limited and relative with the subject to infinite will. The sovereign is limited and relative and subject to the infinite will, to the ethic or restriction and limitations of all humanity. The cooperation, mutual consideration should be taken place in destructive competition, ruinous rivalries of people and nations. That is wrong of nations for individuals to steal and lie and kill. That was Hill, Rebuilding Europe, Chapter 3. The forbearance, forgiveness, service, and sacrifices binding up the nations as well as upon the individuals. The great wealthy nations and stewards and trustees of the welfare are small, weak, and undeveloped. The true national greatness comes in the service of the world, not in the dominion over it. There are all races, nations, and great and small alike, the right shared of the world, right resources, and opportunity, self-directing, expanding the life in harmonious cooperation with the result of mankind. The justice and right dealing with international affairs imposes part of the development throughout the land of the spirit of the Christian good, and the brotherhood of them must express its establishment of social justice and right dealing in its own industrial economic problem. If there is a new world, it must be first of all new spirit of the nations. There must be created by the international mind of conscience. Must learn to think that humanity is one of the family. Have to have a world of patriotism. This means that jealousy, selfish, and must be based on the policy and practice upon the Christian principles that they must be quickened to resent injustice in the nation as by individual. Humanity became an ideal in order that they become an actuality. One world of patriotism must be faith and chivalry before it organizes international peace must become aspiration religion before it will become reality. Reconstruction of International Life 2. The Federation of Nations. The most be an international organization which some of the new ideas affect circular world justice. As accumulations cause along as the work the deeper the meaning of the world of the issue must be not drawn, but to oppose exclusive ideas the issue between the state of the absolute absolutism in world humanity, and struggle determining whether each of the states shall claim the absolute authority and shall accept the law of international right, and struggles decide whether each state is a law upon unto itself and makes it in its own good supremacy, whether the nations are not nations are part of humanity or live together in the term of justice. The world has solved the question as far as individual society is concerned. We learned of the many lives of the society that has been therefore have been taken social orders and have been taken social orders and accept the law of social life. Learning to live with the common good of being willing to have the interests measured in the common welfare, we solve the question as also, too far as the United States is concerned, we have the Confederation of States operating toward one common end, accepting their policy in the nation, and all things that affect external affairs, obeying the common law, leaving the final decision to the national government. In our time, humanity is facing the question of the organization of nations and the society of states, and becoming the clear humanity of one of the nations that are integrated and independent members of the one body. There, each nation is obligated to take their things of the others and take a look and not alone of the things itself, but of the things of others. If necessary, the nation that believe that the world, humanity, international justice to express their common life in some of their international organizations. There is no such thing as absolute liberty for the individual as the part of society that must be willing to accept his place in the social order, consent with having the interest measured in the welfare of all. There is no military justice to claim absolutely sovereignty on the part of the nation, that on the part of the individual absolute sovereignty, says the suggestive writers, means absolute anarchy. The one nation must therefore think of itself as part of a humanity living with the other parts of the terms of justice and peace, and must realize nothing can be really good for itself which is evil to the rest. It must come through the perceive whatever policy blesses each. There are four possible ways a nation may live together and may seek peace. They may briefly noted. National individualism. The policy assumes that the nations are separate and individual, at least each are able to live in its own life, sufficient upon all things. The policy might have been possible when tribes were few and small, men and needed were simple, but the policy is physically impossible today. The nations, as many of the crowded to one another, and moral impossible for no nation can live unto itself and by itself, each dependent upon all and all owing things such to each beyond that many things are to working, driving nations together, compelling them to have dealings with one another, different people, trades and industries, railroads, even the routes is all making internationalism, nationalism. Nations must have the dealings with one another depending on one another. They must therefore come into some kind of relation, and this fact is certain in tendency where do we go? As a matter of fact, they have never lived apart, each separate and independent. Thus farther has always expressed the weaker and sought of the crush and absorb and certain world independence. Competing states, strong, weak, would mean the confusion of warfare. It's useless to the policy remedy in the reverse of the history. It denies the unity of human race. The impossible for the small, weak, and the states to maintain themselves as the presence and stronger they were each declined. More probably would enter the alliance of other people. They conquered and absorbed by greater power. This would mean endless confusion, and would create all conditions of bitterness of war. Second, imperialistic groups. In all times, there have been tendency toward the formation of empires, usually made by the force of a combination of many people. The great empires of past formed in the way the great as wrong as the wrongs caused. Yet did something in advance in the race. In later times, the tendency has become every mark of work to today composed of the federal imperialistic groups, and particularly include all peoples. The smaller nation and being absorbed in larger groups, and many of the disadvantage of the smaller nation ensures the protection against the aggressive enemies and gives benefit to the trade of the larger unit. The policy of all history testifies and contains no guarantee of world peace, for in our time the developing enduring contrast between great empires, world mastery, control of trade routes, new territories, very imperialistic groups and alliance with the groups they may in an effort in pretense as at least maintain a balance of a group. Therefore, but every group that insists that the balance shall be in favor, it will never possibly few ambitious groups, competing antagonists that live together in the peace, ensuring the welfare and the world peace, and it depends on the balance of the power, the uncertainty best. Such balance is also unconcerned, and equilibrium is easily upset. Equally impossible for each of these imperialistic groups, made of that they are diverse, to beat the peace of themselves. Either the small peoples must be suppression of aspirations which they are not likely to do, or they will be the state of chronic revolt. And the world ought to have learned in time from Assyria and Rome. Russia and Germany. And the policy fatuous, foolish formation of imperialistic groups made by the suppressed people living in an unattainable equilibrium contains no guarantee on the peace, and really has made the war widespread. There is no hope of the world peace in the policy of imperialism. 3. A third convincing policy is world dominion. The history of the modern field testifies that as the dream of the Mayan people in Cyrus and Alexander Caesar to Attila to Napoleon to William Zoran, but always every other dream at the end of the way ended in some way. Humanity is different from any man of the nation to control and combine all others. All the racial differences indirect and ineradicable and persistent. They are sure that they assure themselves sooner or later brought the nation of bringing to naught the plans of the world conquerors. The attempt of any of the people dominate the world. Therefore, the madman's dream. It is fear that it will be the madman with the dream forever. It will be end in the same way. The world can never be bought and subject of any one nation. It can be done, and it would be only one time. Only one. If it could be done, it would be only for a time. Humanity will never be the slave of a man or any nation. A denial of God and moral impossibility. And if modern nations of either Germany, Britain, Russia, or the United States should ever be foolish enough to cherish that delusion, the sooner it will give them up better in the way of lies, disasters, and not peace. 4. The only alternative world federation the use of talk to return to old order. The attempt to break up the race of distinct and independent nations, some smaller, other larger, would be reversal of history, and certain that the races will make more tending to consolidation and cooperation. Mankind has once asked advantages. The combination is not like to throw away those advantages away. That would destroy progress in limited time trade, beginning no benefit in denying the unity of the race. Process of consolidation must go in the race in advance, but it cannot be promoted from the promotion of imperialistic groups. It cannot be through the world dominion of the one power. There is one way out of the nations and genuine federation of all people. This is just fair. It recognizes the right of each of the people, however, to live on its own life, develop its own institutions, and recognize the independence of all. That provides the union for all sake of it all, and so that provides the basis upon which there can be a real community life and interchanging the gifts. There must be a League of Free Nations federation of the world in direction. Several things may be noted. There must be a world parliament made to the representation of all nations and consider questions commonly interest of the frame international laws, interpret world justice. There must be an international court to interpret the international law, decide all questions that arise in the nation state and according to the accepted principles of the law. Any nation feeling itself wrong may submit the case to the court of injunction. No nation shall free to the attack another till the case has been heard. There must be always international police force larger and strong enough to enforce the international law against any offender member. The international police force should pose an army and navy stronger than any of any member. In fact, they should be the only army and navy in existence. No nation would be permitted to gather deeply weapons. Times has gone by the nations of the earth and can permit any freebooting nation to enter the danger of peace of the world. They cannot permit the international thug aggress of weaker peoples and to steal their land and crush them out of existence. As an individual cannot permit individuals to make their own wishes endanger the peace of society, so the nations no longer put any of the people to run and amok and embroil the nations in war. The person who would live in their society enjoys and benefits must come under the control of society. The nations that would live in the world having dealing with other peoples must willingly honor the international justice to live in peace. Nations must teach the disturber of the world peace and the aggressions of the world to do no pay. They provide that the force ruthless should not succeed. They must affirm the establishment of the law of the right among the nations. They must make every people knowing that the dealings and whether the people of dealings shall be on the basis of justice, brotherhood, and the fine. They must league with the nations of an advantage so manifestly real that they will want to enter it. 3. The democratic control of the capital trade must become under the control of reason. Morality must socialize, internationalize. It is recognized by the economic factor that the potent one of the life of the nation is in fact some maintain that the final factor. It determines many families' social lives, influences potential. It does not shape the wholly effective standards of the religious ideals, but that it is a powerful factor of life, society, and determine many things. This is not all, but during the past generation there has been a remarkable industrial development among the nations. The world supply of the wealth of the multiplied by surplus capital has increased. The seek of the profitable investment. The wealth has been incorporated so that it has become impersonal and war to the competition, business, trade, industry, and one of the chief causes of the international friction of the war that causes the Great World War. Found that these causes, such as David Jane Hill, run deep in the soul of the trade of the rivalries, and in and out of in outward form the cause of the war seem ambiguous for leaders, but at the bottom of the contest traders for the economic advantage. Modern wars are primarily trade wars. Modern armies and navies are not maintained for the purpose of ruthless taking of the human life or recovering rulers with glory. There are the one-handed army guardians of the economic advantage already possessed, and another agents intended to figure the depredation generally organized for the purpose to allege, in a sense at which is themed a spacious moment and dispatch upon the mission of aggression. In the past, history shows that selfish ambition have sought the place and power at the expense of the fellows that have schemed to gain the control of the government and the use of the power from the peoples of the roughshod or over them. They sacrificed the usurpations that they admitted the doctrine of the divine right of the kings, and they have tried to keep the people into subjection in the political power. It appears the tyranny that people would within the world to conquer the people without. The centuries have been ever growing. The revolt of the public imperialism and the democratic movement of the revolt found in the definite voice and power. But in these later times, the growth of the economic imperialism threats and quite evil and tyrannous as the old political imperialism today is the selfish, ambitious impulse of men in finding an expression in the power of capitalism. As we've seen, there has been a remarkable increase of the surplus capital. The capital seeks the power, profits whenever they can be found, so obtains the variable privileges and so concessions. In other lands, they have very doubtful methods to exploit the weaker people, and they call the home government to have the flag protecting investments and foments war and sends men to die for like the sake of the banker's profit. Political imperialism has committed unspeakable wrongs. Any mankind, any history, mournful records, modern economic imperialism that they were young in the years shows that they're capable of the wrong, quite outrageous whiteness of leopards, explanation of the Congo, the Boer, and the Egypt extermination of the heroes, the world ambition to build an empire, control another, made by the gain of oneself, change from the other method is to aim inner spirit and motive. The old imperialism levied tribute to the new imperialism lends money in as its interest. Okay, the spirit of economical imperialism, chief cause of the world war. Pan-Germany is simply economic imperialism. Germany depends on the right to grow and expand, and shall demand on the place of and she demands a place in the sun. She insists that some of the most opportunity to protect the interests and fulfill the divinely appointed destiny. But behind and beneath all the fine phrases that they sordid scheme of all, economic imperialism, seeking power of the profits. German manufacturers want to control the iron and coal resources of Belgium and France. They want raw materials from Africa and South America. The German bankers' profitable investments of Turkey and Russia. German trade wants to checkmate the Britain Asian control of the trade routes in the world. The Germany imperialists want to make the world safe for their capital and trade. The power in the capitalism greater than the power of the kings, and economic imperialism is standing against the world peace. The democratic movement must go forward, bring capital under the control of people. The two aspects of this task may be mentioned: the international and external. The reason for the two rapid exports of the capital abroad, and short of the bad division wealth at home, we must therefore bring the wealth industry under control. For the society must prevent the unjust and unsought accumulation of the capital. Democratic policies declared that the political power can be trusted in the hands of one man. Of the few men both constitutional guarantees the diffusion of power of people and have been protected them against autocracy and tyranny. Democratic people must be declared the economic power cannot be placed in the hands of one man and the group of the bankers. Constitutional guarantees which shall define the justice, democratic diffusion of the wealth and control the industry. The people must protect themselves against the economic exploiters, autocrats, as long as the industrial autocrat in the form of the method, as long as the bad division of the wealth at home, and many laboring hard of the small income, the few drawing large income, often do so, doing no work and giving no equivalent. So long purpose surplus capital will exploit weaker people in economic imperialism in the world menace. Okay, then with the democratic control of the wealth and industry at home, the comparative easy to prevent the economic imperialism. The nations must insist on capital wealth and may come under the control of the people, may be made with severe humanity, exploiting weaker people to the interests of the bankers, bonds, and trade. If it ends, created international friction or the breed war, international trade of it, rivalry, war smothered, will no cause how imperialistic schemes and are coded over the fine phrase of the necessary flow of the capital development of the backward people. While the white man's burden is survival to fitness, but the very least of the pleas for the autocracy and the conquerors have always deceived themselves and awed the people. The nations have the unit to make at the end of the political imperialism, so they make the unite at the end of the economic imperialism. They must be no more exploitation of Africa by any nation. That must be open for trade of all. The nations must make it for impossible few men, whether the autocracy empire contain captains of finance, bargain trades, and diplomats in secret, and plunge the people into the war, and murder the peace of the world. Never again much such power along the hands of the few selfish and unreasonable person. Since the people must take affairs of the world in their own hands. Autocracy, political, commercial cannot be trusted with so much power. As the democratic nations have divine right of the kings, and have taken the affairs to the state of their own hands, and all nations must deny the divine right of the capital, and must bring the wealth of the old under social control. They must say that the autocracy and reasonable capital may be exorbitantly profit for the exploit and weaker people, fomenting trade rivals and outrageous dangers of autocracy and militaristic Kaisers. Okay, in the evidence that there is, if we are to peace among the nations, that the might economic forces must be moralized, come to the control of society. The nation of the created by the veritable Frankenstein now the monster has grown gone to so strong that he resents control, and nay, he manages the creator of the nations in danger of them being destroyed, and very powerful, and they have been created. The center that economic life in the nations must be redeemed, immortalized. The economic imperialism standing menace of the peace of the world. It is useful talk of the peace to form leagues of nations, so long as the capitalism has its way and shows the seed of the war. The less of the economic force of the demoralized, controlled by the nations will be exploited, and they will accept a succession of murders of wars. Okay, the earth for the earth of the people, the nation must take the next step, control the resource of the earth and interest of the people with a deepening meaning of the life. What is the purpose of God if it is working for the world? So far as what we can read of the meaning of the purpose is the training of the conscious as being of the divine art of living together, and all forces of the factors of life the analysts contribute. To the end, whether they are with all called the religious, moral, political, economic, one aspect is that there is vital there. The different nations have different characteristics, traits. The inhabit different sections of the earth that are characterized very diverse climate, souls, protections, resources. A nation possesses wide territory as Russia is other than the United States becomes more and less sufficient, but no one nation it can be sufficient enough unto itself that it would live half a full life and have wide development. It must have dealings with other peoples. It must give the fullness of receive the resources of others. Trade to be large, profitable to be profitable must be international. Raw materials widely scattered. One nation must be depending upon other supplies. All that creates a modern international problem is causing the condition of the war. Thus, we have failed to solve the intelligent injusticely. The war is a price we pay for the failure. Our principle must guide us here into the which shall become either the problem, the principles of interdependence and control of the accepted true, the nation, world, now acceptance of the true of the world. The world is one family, no nations live to itself or for itself. Okay, the earth and its resources belong to the people. The principle eminent domain is true of the world, for it's the nation. The last analyst of the rights of men, one of the rights of the life, the property, and the society, so the rights of the nation, position, resource, the humanity for the person, that there is no such thing as absolute right. No one can do he pleases over the life with his life or property. Any society requires the use of these in such a way that serve the common good. So the same principle is true of the nations. Each nation lives on humanity for humanity. It holds the possessions and stewardship for the mankind. No one nation can seize, take and use whatever it uses. Humanity may reach each of the nations to serve it at all, and in the cert of the people of the principles of eminent domain and the regulated use of the resources for the benefit of all. All stress and strain of the war, various nations compelled to take the control of natural resources for the means of transportation, food supplies, and the manufacturing apparatus. Some of the nations, to prevent the international profiteering and injustice, must exercise supervision over the world resources, control trade at the root routes. The way out of the nation was within itself suggests the way out of all nations into today together by federal action that must be taken the control of the earth resources may be the resource available for all mankind. The stronger nations have felt free for the seas of territory, for the weaker people obtain the rich concession often by chicane and exploited the advantage against the people of its possession. The great regions of the earth have been simply the hunting grounds for economic profiteering. Not only so, but the one nation seek to grow the control of the raw material for the other advantage. It so founds the colonies to furnish rubber, cotton, coal, and iron. One of the nations to gain the raw materials provided war forces in excess territory. They can no longer be justice and peace of the world so long as the practice is obtained. Our course leader is clearly unlimited independence, serving sovereign states, and the impossible and undesirable as anarchy, freedom of individual citizen. The justice of the peace of the nation will come into the precious of the same way as they have been approximated with the state, by the union and the cooperation of all rights, be all protection, each serving all, in society affirmed the principle of the social stewardship for the person and some of the nations. Must affirm the principle of national stewardship of the world, and we must affirm that the old principle of the earth, with its resources, with the good given of all the children of men, we must say that they against the society the interest to allow the individual's exclusive control of the natural resource to make the private property exploit them to one own's advantage against the welfare of society. In the like of the manner must say the wrong against the human for any of the people to waste the resources for any other nation, to seize that the resource of any other nation of its own consent, use of the benefit for all the exploitation of the humanity would be no better than the exploitation of one nation, but it depends on every people that would live in the world and have dealings with others, and should come from the reign of the law, recognizing the obligations as well as the claims of the rights, agrees to the use of the resources, advantage of all nation that lives in the fellowship of the other through a trade of the most accepting fact of the right of stewardship under the supervision. The nations must practice the international trade morality. We have no morality and church morality, but we do not have to trade morality across the international lines. Individuals believe that the wrong, to covet, to cheat, to steal, to kill, but only to murder, to partly way to believe that it is equally wrong for traders and nations to do these things. Nay, many of them condemn the wrongs when they done by one of the men against the other within the nation, fully approve that all things when done in the interest of the trade of one nation against the outside of the people. World must keep open the highways of the world, guarantee the freedom of the seas to all people. We must insist the strategic points of the earth shall be internationalized and kept open to all. We must insist the sovereignty of the nation shall end of the own boundaries and colonies. The sovereignty in the never absolute is almost limited. Relative to humanity, in a word, made by the principles of international morality, international law, international trade. We must create a presumption in the favor of a world federation, world justice, and world peace. We must internationalize affirmations of American democracy, and must declare that we hold the truth of these self-evident, that all nations are created equal, that each has an inalienable right to be and possess its own territory and to enjoy its own institutions, and the international government of the world must rest upon the consent of the governed, and sufficient that the generation to affirm the principles and preparation of the application must be worked out with future organized policy of the nations. The nations must prepare the peace of the has herethrough to the prepared of the war. The defeat of Germany will settle nothing and ensure them no peace unless the nations remove the cause of organize the international life of the basis of justice, terms of the peace of the arbitrary that play with the destiny of the nation, and however the weak that tolerate the injustice result. The suspicion contains the seeds of the future warfare. The nations must know that the cause of the lead of the policy just enough to make the peace possible. Peace is not a cause but a result. Righteousness is only a foundation on which the real peace can be built. The root of righteousness is peace. The effect of righteousness is quietness and confidence and forever. The deep sufficient scripture statement concerning King Solomon, first interpretation of King of Righteousness, and after also King of Peace. Hebrews 7. Righteousness must therefore be one of the first concerns. Let righteousness prevail among all nations. Peace is certain, but without righteousness there can be no real or lasting. Yet 3/4 of every efforts to secure the peace ignore the truth, to try to find some way other than that justice. Other foundations can no man lay international peace that have been laid. The foundation stands secure in the nations and build upon them, and works do abide. God will overturn our works, and we shall have the wars, confusion of the acceptance of foundations. We shall never have international. We never shall have international peace till we have international righteousness. People does not come by coming diplomacy, crafty compromise. It could be poised upon balance of the power guaranteed by arguments. Peace is not assured by the fruit by the fighting steps, and only attained when the justice is done. Diplomacy may patch up the truth. The sword of the may stop on the aggressor to defeat the schemes, although it is best for negative and uncertain. The peace of the positive, the rest of the justice, the fair dealings, the confidence, the goodwill, and have the nation's mind to be just. Do they have the real justice, the real means of the supreme questions? Okay, turning to the last page of this one. For our time, our nations and the nation would have real lasting peace. Our nation, along with our other nations, they must learn to hunger and thirst in righteousness, be just in all their ways. They must have sacrificial attitudes of mankind, look not alone on these things, but also the things of others. Please come, reign of the justice grows, lives. Thus far we sought to find peace and agreement, compromise by adjusting our antagonism of men and nations. We shall really find the peace, establishing justice, association, nations, and righteousness. Hill, the rebuilding of the Europe. Brailsford, the world of steel and gold. Howie, the war. Wheel, end of the war. Hobson, democracy of the war. Angel, the political conditions of Allied success. Brailsford, the League of Nations, and Gladden, the forks of the road. Church in the crisis. Chapter 5. 6.